Brazil is one of the 10 largest economies in the world, and because of economic reforms, Brazil has opened its doors for international business. But American companies need to do their homework if they want to succeed. As in many cultures, relationships are key in Brazilian business culture.
If your Brazilian colleague tells you, I'll get the document to you tomorrow, what they're really telling you is that they'll get the document to you someday after today. And your ability to really understand what day that's going to be is going to be dependent upon your relationship with that individual. Building close personal working relationships in all Latin-based cultures is absolutely critical.
Another important tip, time is relative.
American concepts of time, deadlines, punctuality, agendas, need to be flexible in Brazil. So if you schedule a meeting for 10 a.m., people might not really show up until a few minutes later or many minutes later. And when they do show up, talking about business is not the first thing on the agenda. What they may want to prefer talking about is how the soccer team did the night before, the weather, politics, all sorts of things other than the details that they're at the meeting for.
Hand gestures can have different connotations in Brazil.
There are some gestures in Brazil that Americans and Westerners need to be aware of, because while it wouldn't mean anything to us, it might have a very negative meaning to your Brazilian friend. For example, making the OK sign, where you hold your thumb to your forefinger, depending on how you hold your hand, can have a very vulgar meaning in Brazil. And the subtlety is often lost on Westerners.
And the last tip, we're all Americans.
Try to refer to yourself as a U.S. American, or in my case, somebody from New York, rather than an American. And I would say this is a good thing to do throughout all of Latin America, because remember, everybody who lives in the Americas, in South America, in Mexico, in Central America, and in North America, is an American. And people in Latin America often don't appreciate it when U.S. Americans appropriate that term for themselves.
For HLN, I'm Richard Louie.
China is a mass market and one of the fastest growing economies in the world. But if you want to be successful in business anywhere, the first step is understanding the culture. That is nowhere more true than in China.
I have been doing business in China for 25 years. The first thing you experience and you feel is the energy level, the excitement, their positive attitude that is so contagious.
China is a country steeped in tradition, and relationships are key.
Traditionally in China, the only way things got done was through a network of relationships. And in Chinese, the Chinese refer to this as guanxi. And guanxi means I have an obligation to take care of you, you have an obligation to take care of me.
Saving face is a fundamental value.
If there's anything you have to say that makes somebody look bad, or challenges them, or questions their decision, you don't want to do this publicly, you don't want to do this in front of others. At the very least, you take somebody to the side and you speak with them privately.
Numbers have deeper meaning to the Chinese people.
I had a corporation founded in 1944. Now, they were very proud of that. They've been in business for 66 years. The trouble is, if you look at 4-4, that translates in Chinese into si in Mandarin, which is also death. So when I said just use, we've been in business for 66 years. 6-6 translates into Leo, or happiness.
Follow proper dining etiquette.
First of all, never cross your chopsticks in an X. That means bad luck. Never separate your chopsticks and put them on either side of the plate. That's bad luck. And the worst thing you can do with your chopsticks is stick them standing up straight in a rice bowl, because that is the ancient Chinese symbol for death. When somebody died, they would take their personal rice bowl, fill it with the last bowl of rice, and put their personal chopsticks in there, standing up at the head of the grave.
Find an English-speaking hotel.
Staying at the right hotel is very important. First of all, and I'm not saying anything against Chinese hotels, because some of them are absolutely charming, but nobody speaks English. So you need a good concierge, you need a good business center that you can make changes with. The concierge will take your business card. They will go and call that company and make sure that address is still good and hasn't changed.
For CNN, I'm Kathleen Conway. France is the second largest trading nation in Western Europe, and it's a leading economic player in the EU. When it comes to doing business in France, there are many opportunities, but there are cultural nuances you should know.
I think the big lesson I learned, when particularly in France, much stronger national culture to some extent. We're a melting pot over here. And France is that way too, but France does think that when you live in France, you ought to at least pay some attention to French culture.
Language is an important part of French culture.
Sometimes the French will say, well, you're not really speaking French well, so let's speak English. But they're not disapproving of your efforts. They just want you to do it right. And if you can't do it right, let's just switch to English. It's easier for both of us.
The French approach problem solving in a detailed manner.
I've seen so many negotiations between French and Americans fall apart over just this issue. The Americans put forward their plan, the conclusion, and provide just enough information to support it, while the French are working through detail after detail, trying to justify their conclusion. What happens is the Americans perceive the French as being too picky, too detail conscious, not focused on the end result, and the French see the Americans as just providing an answer with no justification.
Develop a relationship.
You walk into the meeting, you say, "Hi everyone, everybody sit down, I'm ready to do business. We think we can grow your business." And you start waving your hands in the air and you do all of these things. And they're sitting there like, no, wait a minute, I need to get to know you a little better before I might even want to hear what you're about to say.
Show interest.
Say what you feel, give an opinion. If the French disagree, they'll tell you. But this is part of doing things in a very French way.
We also have to be receptive to the idea that at the end of the day, you know, it's time to get to know people on a personal level and go out and have dinner. And, you know, sometimes I think over here we eat to survive. They eat over there because it's a great thing and they enjoy it.
For CNN, I'm Kathleen Conway.
India's largest investment partner is the United States. The workforce in India is English-speaking, well-educated, and cost-effective. These factors have led India to one of its largest revenue streams, American outsourcing.
Most U.S. companies have their back office operations somewhere in India. When you have a customer service call or a complaint, you pick up the phone and oftentimes you get an Indian call center. So everyone is working with India, whether you choose to or not. And understanding some cultural issues about that is going to be important for success.
First, respect the ranks.
People in India are very sensitive about their position, about levels and titles, and one of the things you must be very careful of is to always address people by their rank. So if you know someone's title, you use it in their name. If you know if they've gotten some advanced educational degrees, that will be right on the business card.
Open a path for feedback.
Oftentimes, if there's a problem or a suggestion or an idea, it's never brought forward, it's never brought upward. And so as a manager in India, you want to really reach out to your Indian staff. Tell them everything you want them to do. Be very clear about how you want them to do it. And give them a process for bringing bad news upward to you.
American versus British phrases.
Remember that Indians are speaking a form of Indian English, which is a combination of British English, local English, and it is not necessarily American English. And that can get American business people into trouble because the phrases might be mysterious and they might in fact mean opposite what you intend them to mean.
Handle with care.
Please remember in India and in many parts in South Asia to try to only use your right hand when you eat with food and when you pass food, and even if you pass important documents. Use of the left hand should be avoided because in the old days, the left hand was reserved for personal hygiene. So don't touch food with your left hand, try to avoid touching people with your left hand, and eat only with your right hand.
For HLN, I'm Richard Louie.
Half a world away, Japan is an enticing business market. It's the world's second largest economy, with considerable spending power. But small businesses that are considering doing business in Japan need to know business etiquette requires more than practicing a respectful bow.
I think at the outset, I did speak some Japanese, so I thought that was going to be sufficient to open a number of doors at a business level. It was not.
I can't think of two cultures that are more different than Japan and the United States in their business styles. And I think any American going to Japan really needs to understand the way the Japanese think about business in order to be effective with them.
First, know the proper greeting.
Hold your business card in a proper way, which means with two hands, usually with the readable side facing the person you're giving the card to.
Understand that the Japanese try to avoid conflict.
So if you ask Tanaka-san, did he like the terms of the agreement, he's going to say, yes, the terms of the agreement are very interesting. Perhaps a few things need some further study. Well, that's his way of saying that he really doesn't like the agreement at all. But he's not going to be direct about things that are difficult or problematic.
Know there is a language barrier.
At a more sort of day-to-day personal level, using idioms is probably not a good idea. It's very hard to translate. Jokes don't translate so well either, unfortunately.
Be social.
You want to get out there, you want to go to dinner, you want to go to karaoke. And at these times, this is where you'll hear the real feelings come out. During the day, it's difficult to hear what they're really thinking and feeling, particularly if it's problematic. But over dinner, over some sake, then they're going to lean over and they're going to tell you one-on-one what they really think.
Recognize that the Japanese like to make group decisions.
So you shouldn't go to Japan expecting meetings to be opportunities for making decisions. They're not. They're vehicles by which you share information. And the decision comes back to you later after the whole team has had a chance to talk about it.
I just think you should do your homework and be patient. Things will never happen in Japan as fast as you think they will.
For CNN, I'm Kathleen Conway.